So let's take a look at lower abdominal strength. We're going to start with the video on the left, and what we're going to do is we're just going to watch this person contact the ground. And run form aside, what we're really looking for is how well can this leg track behind them without having compensation from above. And this is huge for runners because what we tend to find, and this isn't just runners in general, but the sport athletes in the population in general tend to train their upper abdominals. So the abdominals run off one of the abdominals, your rectus abdominis, comes off your rib cage and your sternum and comes down and it grabs onto your pubic symphysis in your pelvis. And if we look at the two different aspects of that muscle, you can have it pull from the top down, and that's more of your crunchy motion, or it can pull from the bottom up. And this bottom up piece is really what we're looking at, because as our hip extends and we watch this runner as their foot tracks behind them, the force is going to be pulling down on their pelvis to get this leg to come back. If we don't have good hip extension, either because we're tight in the front muscle group or just tight in the hip in general, as that leg tracks back, what's going to happen is the tension on the front is going to pull down on the pelvis, and we can see that in this runner as her pelvis tips forward. So we'll watch her as she comes back again. Look at how her pelvis is nice and neutral, and then as she gets into hip extension, she's still pretty good here, but she's going to run out of rope. As she gets to that next couple phases of hip extension, now when she's here, she can't sustain that neutral pelvis and everything tips forward. So one of two things is happening, and this is tough without having her on the table in front of us, is we don't have a good counter force. We don't have something pulling on the front of our pelvis. Our lower abdominals pulling on our pelvis to keep ourselves neutral, or we're just too tight and it's dragging us into extension in our low back. So as this leg comes back, you're going to see the lumbar spine arches, the pelvis tips forward, and that's all due to weakness or tightness. So hip extension, stretching your hip flexors to get you more play going backwards. But then also stop training the muscles up here that pull down. We need to train the muscles up top or on the bottom that pull up. If we can get good, strong lower abdominals, we can cut this compensation off where the whole pelvis needs to rock forward to get yourself extension through your hip. And again, that compensation comes through the low back and the pelvis tilting forward. If we look at the other side of the spectrum here, or not on the other side of the spectrum, but a very similar case happening, and this is great because it's a nice close shot of the pelvis. Look and see how her pelvis is still relatively neutral. If I had to come in and draw what her pelvis is, or where her pelvis is at, it's somewhere right around here, just like this. Her hip socket's here, and her bones coming down. As she comes through hip extension, you're going to see her whole pelvis collapse downward, and you can see that through there. So watch the dimple here, and you're really going to see that drive downwards as she comes towards push-off. So she's not getting clean hip extension, she's getting compensation to get hip extension, and that's causing a huge problem. As she comes through to try to get hip extension, again, her pelvis is sitting roughly right here, and then the whole thing drops downwards and tilts forward. So she's not getting, again, clean hip extension. If we get those lower abdominals, again, they attach right here. If she can pull up strong here, it's going to keep that pelvis from tipping forward. So we need good, strong lower abdominals. We need to stop training the upper abdominals. Everyone trains the guys up here, when really what we need to do is train the muscles on the bottom half. So it can be done through RunSmart Yoga, RunSmart Bootcamp. Base 6 Bootcamp does this and really focuses on those lower abdominals to check this extension so we can start compensating. You're going to get a stronger push into the ground, less drag on your lumbar spine, and just cleaner, more solid running overall.